Hello, person watching this. I imagine you've seen a lot of these before now. Thank you for taking the time to look at me. I'm not shaved. I haven't shaved in a couple days. I'm a college student. I previously spent a lot of my time having to be shaved, so now I try not to shave any more than I have to. Although we are getting to the point where it's going to have to get done, or I'm going to have to go to a pair of clippers. But I'm furry, so, except for here, no further. If you see me looking over here, I'm looking at my kitchen area and the clock, so I'm trying to track my time. Hopefully you can see what I'm pointing at. My name is Shane Bowie. I've moved 32 times in 32 different places in my life, and I've lived in 7 different states. I'm not a military brat. You were probably thinking that. I get that all the time. I just lived one of those lives where there were a lot of opportunities afforded to me. And when I was younger, I thought, hey, you live in a cool place. I'll go live in that cool place for a while and I'll check that out. Some background information on me, and I'm going to try to go, hopefully, with a timeline solid through. I was born in Boulder, Colorado. I've only been there one summer, and I would love to go again. I grew up in upstate New York. I spent most of my childhood running around in the woods and trying to play with stones. We used to have large stone walls, and we used to play on them all the time. Everyone always said that they were from the French and Indian Wars. Ever since I was really young, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a soldier. That was my whole goal. If you'd asked me at between 6 and, 15, I would have said soldier. Everything in my whole life was based on that. And then right around 15, maybe 16, I really started examining my life. And after years and years of training for that, I started realizing that I didn't want to spend my life hurting people and blowing things up and robbing, stomping, and blowing things up, which is what I wanted to do. And I have no problem against anybody who does that, but that's not what I wanted to do. I figured out that I wanted to spend my life helping people. And at 15 or 16, everything's fun and games. That's, an easy thing to do, but it changed my entire life, flipped everything upside down. I had no more purpose in my life. I wandered from thing to thing. My best friends were musicians, so I ended up becoming a terrible, terrible musician and writing terrible music, but it was some of the best days of my life. I ended up working in a recording studio in New York. And I realized that, wanting to help people is very noble, but how you help people is the difficult decision. So I spent my early 20s wandering around trying to find jobs, and right around 21, I started going back to school, and I hadn't been to school, and I was a terrible student. I was very, very bad at school. So it was like a Wednesday, I didn't have a job, didn't know what to do, and I was sitting on my mom's couch, and I was like, I don't know, Mom, maybe I'll go wander from state to state, and I'll go do this and that. And my mom's like, look, if you're going to be here, you got to go to school. You got to do something, get a job, go to school, whatever you want. And I said, you know what, college is right down the road. I'll go to this community college, it'll be fine. She kept me at my word. She packs me in the car on a Wednesday, drives me down there, and I'm enrolled in classes later that day. College is the hardest experience that I'll say it's probably one of the hardest experiences of my life, if not the hardest. I struggled through school. Everyone in my classes would study very little, and they could get great grades. And I always felt like I was just a hard learner. I would study for hours, and I would get headaches, and I would get nauseous, and I would study till I hated what I was looking at. I sat in the math lab for hours and hours and hours. So much so that I was in my college 1, intermediate algebra first one, and I'm taking my final, and I studied so hard for this final, and I'm taking it, and I go in and I hand the paper, and my teacher is great. He just graded right in front of you. So he grades this, and I need a 75, let's say, to pass, right? So I need a 75. And he looks at it and like 73. And he looks at me. He looks at this paper, looks at me, he looks at my work, and he's thinking to himself, because I've seen him before, I'm in the math lab. I live in the math lab. I'm there studying and studying and studying. I put the time in. And he turns and looks at me and he goes, I've seen you in the math lab. I know you're working really hard. Why, you don't, why'd you do this or why'd you do that? And I was like, look, I just did the best I could. And, I'm sorry, I guess, hopefully it's open next semester and I'll take you again. You're a great teacher or something. And he's like, you know what? I think you got this. And he erased one of my answers and he rewrote in the section and he gave me a 75 and I passed that. I've had a lot of experiences like that in my life. He passed me because I put the work in. I made it all the way through my AA program, which is 2 years. I had to take extra classes, so it took me 3.5. I ended up going away to college because I figured out that the thing in my life that I want to do to help people is psychology. It's the only thing in my life I've ever done that I'm very good at. I love talking to people. I love helping people. I like taking people through the process of getting better. I like when people come to you and they feel like it's the end of the world, that they can't make it, and by helping them, by listening to them, you can push them through that process. I went to the University of Central Florida, and I was in the middle of getting my BA degree, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. I studied 8 hours a day. I know a lot of people say I studied a lot. I outstudied anybody I've ever met. I studied so much that I used to have to do study groups, and I'd put a rag over my eyes because they were hurting so bad to be able to keep studying, and I would have them read to me. And I would, keep my eyes closed and I'd be listening to them, and I would copy what was written on the board. I would retype my notes. I would do anything I could to try to pass. I had known when I was in New York that I had learning disabilities, that I had difficulty learning. But because of the gap between New York and going to school in Florida, because of that transition period, I didn't have enough documentation to prove that I had it. And I just figured I'd muscle right through that. So what? I have a hard time learning something. That just means you study for more, right? You study 8 or 9. You do whatever you have to do to make it. So I pushed through that. I studied ridiculously hard. Oh man, I only have 2 minutes left. And I ended up getting tested, and I have 4 learning disabilities. I thought of more of it like climbing a mountain with a broken leg than trying to think of how far I could have run or what I could have gotten out of. It's not who I am. It's not how I chose to reflect on that. I have 1 minute left, so I'm going to glaze through the next couple years. After school, I couldn't get a job. The economy fell apart. I had to lose 60 pounds to get into the Air Force. I did it in 8 months, which is another huge story and trial. I served the United States Air Force Reserve as a mental health tech for 4 years. They never knew I had learning disabilities. I managed to keep that a secret. I made it through tech schools, training, everything I ever did. I was responsible for 1,200 people. I talked to dozens, if not dozens and dozens of patients a day. I've helped and saved many people's lives. I've saved marriages, and I've talked to people in the most pain that you could possibly imagine. I've worked on inpatient units where you see horrible things, and I've seen amazing things. I would like to take the future of my life and work on some sort of outdoor program, some sort of wilderness camp or some adventure therapy. That's my goal. I believe that the wilderness and being outside of technology and away from technology is important to finding a better part of you. I think it's just a piece of that. And that's something I'm going to pursue with my life. That's something I'm going to try to make work, especially when I get licensed. I'm in a master's program for clinical counseling right now. I'm a college student, so I can take some time off. I can take a month off. I can take a couple months off because I can take a semester off. You can do amazing things if you get it in your head that it's possible. And the only person that can truly tell you something isn't possible is you. And once you push that aside and you decide you're going to do it, it just becomes a matter of how hard you're willing to fight for it.